This is lesson 22. Today we're gonna cover using JavaScript variables, strings, and arrays. So we're gonna look at how to name, declare, and assign variables, how to choose whether to use a local or global variable, how to convert between different data types. We're going to look at string objects, arrays. We're going to look at calling and returning values from functions, how to use object properties and values. We're going to define and use the object methods, the math object methods. We'll look at the new and the this keyword and how they're used, and how to use the date object to work with dates. Okay, so choosing variable name. So JavaScript has a bunch of different rules. You can use the digits. Your variable names can include letters in the alphabet, both upper and lower case. You can also use digits in your variable names and the underscore, but they can't be the first character. The first character has to be an alphabetic character. You can't include spaces or other punctuation characters. The first character has to be either a letter or an underscore. It cannot be a number. Variable names are case sensitive. So total num, camel case in this way is totally different with total num with a capital T. So you just have to be very careful with the spelling and the case on your variables to make sure that they match, or you're gonna find bugs in your program. Not gonna be able to figure out why it's not working. So there's no limit on the size of a variable name, but it must fit on one line. That's the only rule. You can't have it on multiple lines. So using local and global variables, global variables have the entire script as their scope, and local variables have a single function as their scope. You can use the var keyword outside of a function to declare a global variable. Even though the var keyword is optional, you should always use it. And you must use the var keyword to declare a local variable inside of a function. Honestly, you're probably better off using the let keyword rather than the var. That's kind of my practice, because then you know you're referring to the local let variable rather than the global variable. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of our examples here. First, on the main page here, I'm going to have a couple buttons: print global variables, print local variables, and then like a clear all that I added to this. So let's go take a look. Again, this works basically the same. We have a button with on click calling our JavaScript functions, and then we're storing all our code in the variables.js file in the JavaScript folder. So here's the variables.js file. Here at the top you have the a variable. This is a global variable because it's declared outside of any function, so it's global. And then here inside the function we have these variables that only exist inside of these functions. So that's why we use the let keyword inside of these functions, because then the scope of that variable is inside of the function where it's declared. All right, so we have a couple of different variables. All we're doing here, this first one, we're adding one to this global variable. So we're increasing it. And then down here, we're adding one to this local num student. So if you notice, we have two of the same variables. One's global, so it could be accessed from any function. And then we have a local version that we create, and that's only specific to this one. So. And the way we kind of demonstrate that, and then we have like a clear all to kind of clear everything out. So the way we demonstrate is we're going to go ahead and print the global variable. And one thing you'll notice is as we click on the global variables, it keeps adding 1 to the global variable. So every time I print it, it adds 1, but it's updating only the global variable. Now if I wanted to do numStudent local variable, if I click on this, now it's updating the local variable, and it's always 1 because every time you fire it, it creates the global variable, sets it to 1, and prints it. But then if I keep hitting the global, you see it keeps increasing. Then I have a kind of a clear all, so it clears everything off. But even though I cleared it off, because the global still has the last value in it, it keeps increasing the global, but the local one's unaffected. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good example of the difference between global and local variables. The nice thing with the global, if you want to store your data kind of outside of everything else, that's the best way to do it, is to use a global variable. Then you can store the data and update it from wherever. All right, so let's go on to assigning variables, values. There's different ways to assign a value. You can assign it when you declare the variable. So here we have var lines equals 40. It's assigned at the same time the variable is created. You can increment the variable by adding 1 to it, doing a +1. So you can say lines equals lines +1. That'll add 1 to the lines variable. A shortcut way, so you don't have to type the variable twice. You could just say line plus equals to add 1 to it, or you can do a minus equals to subtract 1 from it. And then you can always increment and decrement the variables using plus or minus. It's another way, but this increment and decrement only allows you to add 1 every time. Where the previous one, you're adding 1, but you can change this number. You can add 5, 10, whatever you want, depending on what number. Same here. You can add whatever number you want to add to the variable by changing this number. Right here we put 1 in our example, but this could have been 5, 10, and it will add that much to it. All right, then looking a little bit at expressions, there's a bunch of mathematical expressions that you have. We have addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc. All right, so we do have an expression example here. So before I run this, I want to just show you the expression. Okay, so here we have expressions.js. Again, this is kind of the same pattern. We're printing everything over to this target div, and when you click on the button, it calls print expression. So we just have one big function here that's going to keep give us example of different expressions. So here we do the numStudents +1. We do a plus equals 1, a minus equals 1. So it subtracts 1 from it. And then we go ahead and multiply. The asterisk is multiplication, minus is subtraction, and then the numStudents we divide by 31. So we go ahead and run this. You can see the output of all those calculations there. It keeps repeating. All right. And then also the order of operations, very similar to what you learned in algebra. So nothing different here, but you can always go back here to refer to it. Operator precedence, you can use parentheses to control the operator precedence. Again, same rules you learned in algebra apply to JavaScript. Data types. Okay, there's a number of different data types that you have in JavaScript. JavaScript supports numbers, both integers and floating point numbers, Boolean, strings, null, and you can change data types midstream. So you can say total equals 31, or if you went ahead and saved a string to total, it would convert that variable to hold a string rather than a number. So it kind of makes JavaScript very flexible, but in more traditional languages, this would be a problem if a variable was declared with a specific data type, but JavaScript is more flexible. Some ways it can get you into more trouble because of it, but that's pretty much where it's at right now. All right, so let's look at the data types, our data types page. All right, so let's look at here. Again, nothing really different here. We have our datatypes.js, and we're calling this print data types from our number here. What I've done here, all the code that actually displays everything in a paragraph, I put in a separate function, and I'm hoping that that's just saves me a lot of typing, so that here is a little clearer what I'm doing. So here I'm declaring a number because I saved a number into num students, and then here all I'm doing is really printing out the value. But instead of having all this code repeated down here, I just put it all once up here and then call the function that prints things out. So here we're doing number. We have a float here, floating point number. We're saving that. We're saving a Boolean. We're saving a string here. And then I show you the difference between null and an undefined value, what happens when you print those out. Show you how to convert. Here we have start with the string, but convert that to an integer. And then we add that up. Then we go ahead here, and this actually does not error because the integer string, you'll see what happens here. This add string number doesn't end up erroring out. Said it should error, but it really doesn't. Let's see. In this example, we create a string object using the constructor, the string constructor. We'll talk more about constructors later on. And then I'll just show you some of the different functions that come with the string. So there's a function to convert the string to uppercase. So if you have a string and a variable, you just take the variable name of that string and do .to uppercase, and it'll uppercase it. There's a bunch of substring functions that are kind of neat, and I'll show you the output of these in a little bit when I go through the example. And then these are examples of working with arrays. So here we create a very simple array, the scores array, and we print out the array. We print out the length of the array, so it should be 4. We print out a string array, which is just an array of strings, and we print that out. And then we do this join on the array to show you what happens when you call the join. Basically, it combines all the elements of the array and puts whatever the delimiter is in between each element. Then the last thing we do is we show you how to call sort on it to sort an array. All right, so if we go back here to data types and print data types, you see all the different output that we have here. Yeah, so here you have the numbers. We have an integer, we have a floating point, we have different data types here. We have Boolean, set that to true. John Doe's a string. Null value, whenever you print out a null value, it's just going to say null. And then an undefined value, that means if you declare a variable and don't assign it anything, it's going to have this value of undefined, which is different than null. Null is when you may purposely set something to null, but undefined means it was never, there's never value put into that variable. So here's that add numbers example. And what happens is if when you go ahead and add a number and a string, so let's go back to see how we got this. That was up here in the add numbers. So the first thing we did is we printed out the 100, which is what? Oh, sorry. This was... All right. We did 100. We converted to an integer. And then here we did 100 plus 100, which gave us 200 because those are two numbers. Right? We're adding two numbers here. Now what happens when we add the integer 100 with the string 100 is a little different. As you can see here, it concatenated both 100 and because it was concatenated to a string, it converted the integer to 100 to 100 string and then concatenated instead of adding it. The only way you're going to get addition is if you're adding two numbers together, then it will add. But if you have a string and a number, it's going to convert that number to a string and then concatenate it. Okay, here's that string object that we went through, and then the uppercase example that we did. Here you have that alpha, and you can see the different combinations. So if you do a substring 0 through 4, what that does, it says start at array element 0, which is the first array, and go for four elements. So 4 elements would be A, B, C, D, right? Same thing for here. You say start substring 10, 12. Oh no, it's not go for 4. It's actually go for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but don't print the fourth one. Up to element 4, not including element 4. I think that's what it really means. Because here, you could do 10 and 12, you do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 10 is K, so it's the KL all the way up to 12, but not including 12. 12 to 10 is really backwards, and it prints the same thing. Substring 6 to 7 is just the letter G, so it just really prints 6, which is the G there. 24 to 26 is the Y and Z back here, and prints those two. Then this is the array where it prints the scores, prints the length of the array, prints the name here. And then when we join it, it separates the name with the pipe character. And then sorted, it rearranges it so it sorts by first name. All right, so hopefully that clarifies. I think we covered a lot of these. The conversion, we did the string object, the assignment of value, calculating the length of the string, upper lowercase, the part of the string, we did these. Yeah, this one, I didn't show an example of these, but this is just, you can get at any character by doing a char at. If you want to go after individual characters in a string, you use the char at function. Finding a substring, again, you can use this index, and that will tell you if this string exists in the larger string. It will return what element in the string it starts at. Creating a numeric array. Again, this is the example I had over here. There's different ways you can say new array and then individually populate the elements of the array, or you can just say new array, pass the elements in the constructor too, and then I'll create an array of size 4. Okay, understanding the array length. So here you have the new array, and we save the value in scores. And then if you do the array name dot length, it will display, or it will return the length of the array. All right, so this would display 30 because we created an array of size 30. Down here, if we created a new array and set a value to 21 and a value to the fifth element, the length property would have 6, because even though we didn't set 1 through 4, because we set 5, it automatically says, okay, there's a 1 through 4 somewhere in that array. Accessing array elements. So again, you can use subscripts to access the array element here. So element 0, 1, 2, etc. You can do that. This is the example we use for the creating a string array. There's a number of different ways. You can say new array 30. You can actually add these individually. You can say new array and then pass these strings in the constructor. Or you can use the square brackets and then have string literals to describe what's in the string array. So not a lot of flexibility that JavaScript gives you in how to create string arrays. Splitting a string, we did that with the pipe. And to do that, you can use the split function. And to join, the join is the one we did with the pipe, where we take an array and we join all the elements and put a delimiter in between. And that's the one we did with the pipe and the name on there. Then sorting, you call the dot sort, and that will sort your array. Usually it sorts it from the beginning of the string to all the way to the end. So, and it's case sensitive, so you have to be careful about that. So sorting a numeric array, you can actually sort, but to do that, you want to use a comparator to sort it properly. And basically the way you do that is you create a function that takes in two numbers, and then you return how you want the numbers to calculate it. So this example, if A is greater than B, it's going to return a positive number, which is true. If A is less than B, it's going to return a negative number, which is false. And it's going to return a value based on the difference between the two. So based on that, that's how it knows which has a higher value than the other. So all right, so let's move on to functions. So defining a function, we've been doing it all along. You use the function keyword and then the name of the function and then parentheses. You may also have a parameter that you pass to the function, and you can use that function in that manner. So let's go ahead to functions here, do print functions, and here we pop up this alert that prints hello Dave. And the reason for that, if you go back here, let's go to functions. And here we have our greet function. So here we're doing a greeting, and we do an alert, greetings, and then we have who, and that's what we do there. We print the greeting and it pops up as an alert. This is the other calculation we did, but I think that's in the next one. Greet Fred, how we call. Yeah, this is the example of the average function, and that's what I did here. So with this average function, what we did, here's where I did my print. So I'm calling print. So here I called greet, and it passed it the Dave string, and that called this one. And then the average one gets called this way. So we do 3, 4, 5, 6, and it calculates the average based on that, and then we print the score out. So the average came out to, if we look at our result, was 4.5. Okay, we've been using functions all along, so hopefully there's not much new here. Yeah, the big one is going to be creating these objects. Creating DOM objects. We've done a little bit of that in lesson 21, but we'll also talk a little bit about that. Again, DOM objects allow you to interact with the web elements in the browser. There's built-in objects like strings and arrays that we discussed today, but you can also create custom objects, and then we'll talk about that today, creating custom objects. So this is an array object. We've already done that. Now, if you want to create your custom object, one thing in JavaScript, all functions are actually objects. So when you create a function, you're actually creating an object underneath the hood. So what you could do is if you define a function and pass the parameters, if you want to save data in that function, you use the this keyword and then create a variable, and then that variable is attached to that object. So here what we do is we pass in these variables into the into our function, and that's these over here, name, email, address, and then we assign it to the this.name is the name variable that's attached to the card function. And then this is another variable, function that is going to go ahead and print these things out. So it's going to print what we're storing in the name, email, address, and phone variables that belong to the object, the card object. And then what we could do is we can add that function as a function that's part of the that function is part of the object, the card custom object. So let me just show you an example of what it looks like. So here we're going to go to objects. Again, so I'm going to go to my object HTML here, and then we'll do the object.js. Again, all this is the same. Again, if you want to review this video, you can always pause it too in the certain sections so that you can see the code and what I did. But this code right here on the HTML is pretty much the same. So when we go to objects, this kind of sets us up. Now, if you remember, we have the display paragraph function. We're kind of reusing this here, so it makes it easier to print stuff out. Here's that card function that we create, and this card function becomes the card object, because now we start saving, we actually start saving data as part of the object. And then we create this print card function, and what we can do is we can actually add that card function to print card function to the card object, and we do that down here. So this kind of shows you how to create the card. So you can use the new keyword card, because that card function is actually an object, and then we pass it data into the constructor like this, and that's what this becomes, is a constructor for the card object. So then we save all this information in here, and then we can now call print card on that object here. So John is is basically the variable that represents the specific card object, and then we say John.printCard. It goes through and executes and prints all the data that was stored into John's card object. And what we do here is we're just displaying all that data out here this way. All right, so when we see it over here and print objects, Here we print out the name, email address. But again, we were able to store all that data in a card object by using the new keyword and creating our own custom object. And that's really what the whole point of this is, creating your own custom object rather than using the ones that JavaScript gives you. All right, and again, these are examples of creating a JOBJECTS instance. The one we used in our example was this new card here, but you can also say new card, not pass it anything, and then do tom.name, tom.email, etc., and then also call that print card to print everything out after you set the different object variables to their values. All right, and then we said another way of extending, adding that print card function to the card object. The one way you saw up here, if we go back here, was doing it. Was it here? When you define it, you can add it. But let's say you want to add the print card after you've defined it. Well, there's this prototype. There's this prototype variable that comes with every object that you can say prototype, define a method, define a function, and then set that function to an existing function that's out there. But so this print card has to have existed first before you can assign it. But then what that does is it adds that print card function to the card object. All right. So I think the last thing we're discussing is this math object. Again, some of these I don't go too deeply because they're pretty straightforward. The math, ceiling, rounding, and round, these are all mostly for rounding numbers, and they just round it up differently. Ceil rounds it up to the next integer. Floor rounds it down. So if you want to round up or down specifically, you would use ceil or floor. And then just the rounds it to the nearest integer. Random, we've kind of gone over this already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you use, and that's pretty much what this math floor does. It does a random number generator, but when you do this random number generator, it ends up being a decimal, or it becomes a floating point number with a decimal, with a fractional part of it. So what the floor does is it gets rid of the flat fractional and always rounds down. So it rounds consistently down. So that's pretty much what this, and this is just to help explain how this actually works here. And then this is an example of dates. Let's go through, I did do too much on the other one, but I am doing dates. So mostly because we've already covered the random, but I just wanted to explain how that random function we're using works. Now dates, there's a number of different ways that you can create date objects. And again, these are built into Java. You don't have to create them. So if you say new date, it'll set the date to the current date. You can set it to a specific date if you want, and a specific time, because date has both a date portion of it and a time portion. So if you want to set it individually by each month, day, year, you can do that. Or you can do month, day, year, hour, minute, second. So there's a lot of different constructors you can call to create the dates in different ways. That's kind of what we did in our last one, which was the date one here. So let's do that. All right, so here what we're doing is we're going ahead. Again, I use this display paragraph to print everything out. So I'm creating a date. This date is the current date because it's got nothing in the constructor. This date is using a string to create a date that's November 1st, 2024. This one creates November 2nd, 2014 by just passing month, day, year. The next one does month, day, year, hours, minutes, seconds. So here we get a time element to our date. And then here we start looking at the time zone offset, what the UTC string is. This is universal time, so you get the time in universal time versus the local time. And then we can get also the time in local time using toLocal string. So we go ahead here and hit print date. It kind of prints everything out. You can see this is today's date. This is when I made this video, so that's why you have March 1st, 2025. You can see it automatically puts in what time it is. I did this at 11:55 in the morning. Here you have the Saturday, November 1st. This one I hard-coded in here. So I kind of did these by hard-coding the dates. I did 1916. Did I do that? Is it 2024? Oh, that's interesting. That should have been 2014, but it didn't do that. Huh. That's odd. Huh. But you can see it did put the hour on this one. The offset, I put the offset and then I printed the UTC string over here, universal time string. And that's Greenwich Mean Time. All right, I think that puts us toward the end because these I'm just going through different dates. You can use these set functions in the date to set the date, the month, the full year, etc. You can do that. You can get the date, get the month, get the full year, get the time. So you can get the different parts of the date. So if you don't want to get it all at once, you can get different parts of the day. And then these were the ones we did with UTC, the time zone offset, etc. And then you can convert a date string to a date using the date.parse. And then you can always convert the date to UTC time. All right, I know that was a lot for today, but again, hopefully looking through these, and again, if you ever need to pause on any of these, so you want to look at the code, you can just pause this video and take a look and see what I've done with the code here. All right, so until next time, thanks again for taking the time, and we'll talk again soon.